Did you know that the very first film which will have been greenlit and approved by Bob Chapek, the very interim CEO of the Walt Disney Company, will be Deadpool 3? Everything that has come out from Disney, every single item in the last decade, was greenlit and approved by Bob Iger. And yet Bob Iger believes that he is the one to fix all of this. He's fixing his own mistakes. But ladies and gentlemen, that's the kind of trouble you get into when you're playing Twister at a summit in front of some of the most influential people in the world, and, well, I dare say, all of us, the entire world included in that. It's time now to break down Bob yet again. It's part 3, where we examine what he said and why it may not be exactly so. Sorry, Bob, but here we go. Hello, folks. Welcome back to another in this series of Breaking Bob, a series of videos where we are analyzing what Bob Iger had to say. It was long format, and we're doing the same. We're taking this in a series of videos examining what the CEO of Disney had to say. And in this case, it's very fascinating because Bob Iger appears to want you to believe that he is fixing the plethora of problems at Disney. He has come in to save the day. The problem there is that all of this was approved by Bob Iger. Bob Chapek, the CEO who replaced Iger briefly, he was only in the saddle for a very short amount of time. In fact, without the shadow campaign against him, maybe 4 months. And that means that almost everything you see at Disney is an Iger initiative. So how does Iger handle that? What does he say? Who does he blame? We'll examine it right now.
Let me ask you about that IP. You just mentioned Pixar and Marvel and so many of these other things.
Folks, if you thought the live fiesta was over, here we go.
Very recently, as you've seen, because you get the box office numbers every weekend, a number of these films have not performed. They have not performed the way they used to. People question the creative magic at Disney. You can look at the Marvels. I'm curious why you think that disappointed. You could look at Wish, Indiana Jones. What do you think? What's happened?
Well, I think you have to look at it a couple of ways. First of all, I think the movie business is changing, actually.
But not for his competitors.
Box office today is about 75% of what it was pre-COVID.
That's because Disney was part of that 25% that has utterly been eradicated from the box office. So, folks, if you wonder why the box office dropped, 25%, that's the vacation, or that's the vacating of Disney from the box office. What a that's amazing that he would even say that. I love it. Oh my gosh, you can't make this up.
I think we have conditioned the audience to expect that these films will be on streaming platforms relatively quickly.
Five Nights at Freddy's should have never made it.
And that the experience of
Mario should have never made it. Puss in Boots should have never made it. Minions should have, you get the idea.
Accessing them and watching them in the home is better than it ever was. One, easier to access in terms of the technology. Right. Two, just the visuals, better sets in your living room than before. And a bargain when you think about it. Streaming Disney Plus you can get for $7 a month. That's a lot cheaper than taking your whole family to a film.
Then why are you not releasing those movies on PVOD for 3 months or 4 months or whatever to end that? Answer, because it's not the real problem, and they know it.
So I think the bar is now raised in terms of quality about what gets people out of their homes into movie theaters. Some of it is just being part of basically the social wave. Certainly Barbie and Oppenheimer did that.
And other movies that were not made by Disney.
For 2 other studios. And so I think that's one thing. Second, in our particular case, and specifically about those films, some of those films, they were not as good, they were not as high in quality, not every one that you mentioned, as some of their predecessors, our films, and as they should have been, particularly in this environment.
Why do you think that was?
I love this part.
Look
This
at that
is my
face.
favorite question.
Look at that face.
Well, The Marvels was shot during COVID. There wasn't as much supervision on the set.
There we go. Not as much supervision.
If
That's
only Two Shower Bob had been there, Paul. He could have saved it. He could have saved it. It has nothing to do with Brie Larson.
Mike turned around. He's like, I can't look at this no more.
just needed to be supervised.
That's the worst answer I think I've ever heard anybody give in regards to a box office performance. Oh, we just, we didn't have enough executives on hand. That's the absolute worst answer I've ever heard anybody give. That's ridiculous.
You mean to tell me you think that when they changed it from Captain Marvel 2 to the Marvels because they knew they had a Brie Larson problem, you think they just needed more supervision and that would have fixed it?
Correct.
Maybe made her more popular with the audience. I don't.
Yeah.
More studio notes.
They're really looking over what's being done day after day after day. And that was a result of mostly of COVID. But at the same time, we increased our output tremendously to feed the streaming platforms. Too much, by the way.
Mistake.
Folks, don't forget, this is what he said about Star Wars when he said there was Star Wars fatigue and they were going to cut the cadence of content for Star Wars. And by my watch, 2019 was the last Star Wars theatrical release, and 2025 is like a 1% chance, probably 2026. So a 7-year absence of Star Wars. Yeah, that's going to fix it. Let's do that with the other things that now need that cutting of content, surely.
Definite mistake. Quality needs attention to deliver quality. Doesn't happen by accident. And quantity, in our case, diluted quality. And Marvel suffered greatly from that.
Bob Iger approved every single movie that has come out this year.
So there are different reasons, and I'm the first. I've been very public.
In the latest earnings call, Bob Iger bragged that they still had 2 big movies to come out that were going to help their bottom line: The Marvels and Wish.
About it, saying, I would say right now, my number one priority is to help the studio turn around creatively. Now,
I am so glad that Bob is going to be the man to fix. Paul, tell me real quick, how often is it that a CEO has the ability to come into multiple studios that are in critical condition and turn things around? Is that the typical role of the CEO?
Well, no, ever. But you do have people who you've put in charge, and back in the heyday, there were geniuses like Michael Todd that unfortunately died too early. Brandon Tartikoff, who died too early. Maybe it's a symptom of being qualified for your job that it kills you. But there are just very few entertainment CEOs or leaders who can do it well. Bob Iger is not one of them, unless he starts learning how to write scripts. I mean, it would be really funny if he said, okay, I went to the Bob McKee script writing course, and I think I now know how to write scripts. So I'm also going to start writing screenplays to help pull Disney out of its doldrums. See, that would have been the absolute best thing for him to say.
That's the thing. That's the problem with him is he's not a creative. He doesn't see the problems that the studio is having creatively because he's not a creative. He's looking at it from a business lens, or through the lens of business. And when you are, and that's fine. That's his job. He's a CEO. That's what he should be doing. But he needs actual creatives on the ground that actually can tell him, hey, this is the problem that we're having. And, maybe get some of these, writers. Maybe we need to get these writers and directors out of here and bring in some actual creative people, because you don't know anything about this, Bob, clearly. But, if we get some different writers and the actual people that are doing the process of creating, Bob, you're the CEO. That's what your job is. But they're not bringing in good writers and good directors and good creatives to fix the problem, and then he says, well, what we need is more management, because that's his idea. I got to manage this thing better. But you can't manage bad talent. Bad talent is still going to be bad talent no matter how you get around it. So he's got to bring in people that actually love. And that's the other thing he's not doing is the people that he's bringing in, I've talked about this on my channel. He's bringing in people that want to use Marvel as a stepping stone or use Star Wars as a stepping stone to try to get their career kicked off. And he's not bringing in people that love the franchise. You got to bring in people that have a passion for the franchise, that have been fans, or at least have something deep down inside of them. Say, man, I've been waiting to make a Captain Marvel movie. I was a fan of this character, 20, 30 years ago, and I've grown up and dreamed about, like the Kamala Khan character from the movie. Like, that's the kind of person he actually needs to make his content, because there's no passion right now in Marvel or Star Wars, in my opinion. The people that are making these films, they have no passion. They're passionate about, their themselves. They're passionate about their message, but they're not passionate about the franchise. The franchise is just a vehicle. And so that's the issue that I see right now. And that Bob Iger just doesn't have the ability to address it. He has to get down to the grassroots and start finding people that absolutely love and they're passionate about the content that they're making. And then, and only then, will they change things. Until then, it's a wrap. He's not going to fix anything, sitting there talking about numbers and talking about, how much this thing made or that thing made. You got to get back to the passion of filmmaking. They took this institution that we all love. All of us love filmmaking. We all love movies. And this guy and everybody that he's hired has taken the passion and he's just stripped it out. And it's just, it's just a vehicle to make money. And that's it. And that's the problem that he's not answering these questions because he doesn't understand it.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
A few more. Well, it's a catch-22 also, because if he comes out and says what the real problem is, if he comes out and says we've destroyed the trust of families, he's going to harm the stock price. If he comes out and says that the activist approach to making movies doesn't work, then his millennial mob, the millennial mob, is going to turn against him. Well, he gingerly, but he's not said,
that.
Yeah.
Now, Chapek brought someone in to be his sort of not second in command, but the person in charge of the creative flow.
Kareem Daniel, right?
Right. And I thought that was the right approach.
Yes.
And I think there was, no one talks about it, but I think there was probably a hue and cry amongst the flying monkeys internally about that exact hire.
Well,
and
I
they
also
wanted to
think
get rid of Chapek and Kareem. I think that was a really good decision to get things back on track and make people responsible for their actions from a creative perspective. I thought it was really good.
I also thought, Paul, that it was fascinating that Kareem Daniel was probably the most powerful black man in Hollywood and was ceremoniously fired as soon as possible by Bob Iger on day one of Bob Iger's return, and there was not a single semblance of protest out of the media.
But you know why? Because he wasn't the right kind of black man.
There you go.
And folks, we never blame you. No, nay, we say, because the market knows best. We are not Bob Iger. One thing that we really would appreciate is consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts, and don't touch the hippo. That's an inside joke about Bob Iger. If you've been watching the channel, you know it. Folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.